Welcome to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. I'm Deremy Dove, joined by my tag team partner, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jose Ruiz. What's going on, man?
What's going on, Deremy, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. We're into the new year, 2024, man. So happy New Year to you and all our listeners.
Absolutely. Happy New Year, man.
So it's lots been going on. You know, we're getting down to the nitty gritty. Playoffs, NFL playoffs are coming around soon. You know, got the college football playoff, but the big things. I thought it was really cool. It was really emotional this past weekend seeing Jimmy Johnson finally,
Yeah,
after 30 years, get into the Ring of Honor. I thought it was a really cool moment, and it almost felt, in a way, Jose, bigger than his Hall of Fame induction. Almost like it was like this had more attention in a way.
it did. It was great. I was happy for him. Like I know a lot of people, like I was reading on social media, like they didn't want to really watch it. Why is Fox airing this thing, or ESPN, I think it was, and why are they airing it? And I was like, I like seeing stuff like that, like that. I know I'm supposed to not like the Cowboys and stuff. I like Jimmy Johnson. I mean, we talked about him on this show how many times, and
Mm-hmm.
it was really cool to see. He definitely deserved that moment. It was long time overdue. It was cool to see, like Troy Aikman be involved in it, and Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, like Charles Haley. So I was watching this with Alex, and I was like, dude, I say, you see, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all those players, they were on the same team. Like that
Yeah,
Cowboys team was tremendous, and it was cool to see, and I was happy for Jimmy Johnson.
absolutely, man, and it was good because we saw Emmett was there, Michael, Troy, but it kind of brought something else out that we talked
Yeah,
about, and that's why we picked this topic. Is January 2nd marks 30 years since that epic Emmitt Smith game against the New York Giants when he separates the shoulder and winds up playing that heroic game and helping the Cowboys to clinch the division. And Jose, it just brings up a lot of stuff because I feel like the 90s Cowboys are always in people's minds, especially until we see the current Cowboys get over that hump.
yeah.
The ghost of the 90s Cowboys will always loom over there. And one thing that's kind of interesting, though, is as time has gone on, I feel like Emmitt Smith's legacy has kind of been diminished in a way. I mean, people, no one says he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer. They know he's the all-time leading rusher, but a lot of people kind of dismiss Emmitt Smith. So you being one of those people, being that you're president of the Thurman Thomas fan club,
I
why
am.
do you and other people dismiss Emmitt Smith's legacy?
All right, I don't. I agree with you. I do. I think a lot of people are dismissing it. I don't know if it's now like this new generation of NFL fans and football fans and in general. I think the way the game is shifted and the running back position is kind of like the running back position itself. You know that legacy in its own in the position is diminishing. Honestly, like all over in college football, NFL. So I think a part of it is that I think a lot of people that watch the games now, their concern is like fantasy and like wide receivers and quarterbacks throwing for 4,000 yards and Tyreek Hill trying to get 2,000 yards receiving this year or try to, and I don't know. I just think you have one running back that's a really big name right now, and Christian McCaffrey, and I think that's about it, honestly. I mean, you maybe have Derrick Henry, who's still a big name. Maybe Saquon Barkley, but as a whole, I think the running back position is a dying position, man. Like it's just you can get 2 or 3 guys to get collectively, 1,000, 1,100 yards, and most teams are trying to do that. But I know for me personally, like I'll go with that one next. I've never Emmitt Smith was a great player. You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying he is not. Me personally, I just think you could have put a few different running backs with that Cowboys team, and they would have did almost the same what Emmett did. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just my opinion.
Well, I'll say this first. I definitely think yes, the running back position is getting currently getting devalued, and not look the same. But I mean, Barry Sanders, he had a documentary come out recently, Amazon Prime. Bye bye Barry. People don't do that to Barry Sanders' legacy. Especially we see the Lions won the division. Congrats to them, having a good year. I feel like Barry's getting talked about more. I see him on Pat McAfee's show. I know he had a documentary coming out, but like Barry's legacy isn't getting diminished. So like I don't know if the running back if it gets everybody, but I think we kind of saw though you couldn't just put anybody back there.
Not just anybody. I'll say that. I'm not saying because we saw different running backs come in when he was hurt and things like that, but I don't think you could just throw anybody back there. I think I could have picked 10, maybe 5 running backs in the 90s that if you would have put them in there, they would have had a lot of success behind that offensive line. I'm not saying
Well,
just anybody. I agree
I'll
with
say
that.
this: that O line was there with before they were 1-15. A lot of those members, Sands, like Eric Williams. But if a lot of that O line was there when the Cowboys were 1-15 and weren't doing anything. Nate Newton, when Jerry Jones bought the team and him and Jimmy came in, Tex Schramm said, "Get rid of him. He's eating his way out the league." Mark Tuinei, they kind of didn't know what to do. He was a D lineman, and they converted him over. Um, Kevin Gogan was like a throwaway guy. Stepnoski, they looked at like an undersized center, you know. And Eric Williams, even he had 3 years, and then he had that accident. He
Yeah.
wasn't the same. So I feel like that's not a line that has like a lot of high draft picks and a lot of, I think Emmitt Smith helped to make that line great too. And I that's just my opinion. I think like you couldn't just put a lot of backs back there because
Mm.
a lot of that line was they were a power offensive line, right? They weren't a quick kind of like line. They were very power based. So I feel like if you have an east west runner, are they going to be patient enough to let the big guys like a Nate Newton, 2-A, a Gogan set up those blocks and be patient to wait for it and then kind of have that vision like Emmitt, which Emmitt, a lot of people got to give it to Emmitt. When it comes to his division, which is key for running back, he's second to none. I don't know if a lot of backs would do that. That's just my opinion.
I'm also going to add you had one of the best blocking fullbacks of all time also. Like so again, I'm not he's a great player. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I agree with the vision. It was a lot of one thing about Emmitt, I used to always say, like, you'd never seen him take that huge hit. Like, I think one time, I can't remember, I think Sharper I can't remember he was on what team he was on, nailed him and he fumbled. And that was like the only time, but I think Emmitt was a little older at that point. You never saw Emmitt take that one massive hit like you see a lot of running backs take. And I just think because he knew he had that vision and he would see guys come in and he knew when to kind of move or if he had a fall, whatever the case whatever he did. But I just know for me, and I know you too, Deremy, and all of our listeners, like just watching that Cowboys team and that run that they had, there were a lot of touchdowns where Emmitt was just untouched, like especially from within the 5-yard line. It was like a toss play, and next thing you know, there was nobody around him, and he's not even running. He's like just gingerly jogging into the end zone. I can see a lot of teams doing that, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's just again, like I'm not here to debate if he was a great player. He was a great player. Like, you know what I'm saying? Did he make that O-line even better? Yes. But I just feel like I agree. If you put Barry Sanders back there, I don't think that's going to work as well, right? If you put, a lot of these guys in the 90s, North and South runners, I think it would have worked. And he was just put in a perfect position to be successful, in my opinion.
Yeah. I just think what people kind of overlook is that team's a team of the 90s, but Emmitt had a great, his durability and how long he lasted. The argument about, well, Barry would have broken the record. I don't really care to hear that because, I mean, it's Barry's right. I don't knock Barry, but he did retire.
Right. Like
So
that
it's
don't
like,
matter. Yeah.
yeah, Barry could have taken time and then asked for a trade. He could have. It's his right. I don't knock it. I respect his decision. He's not wrong. Um, so I don't look at it that way. Like Emmitt played, Emmitt went through it, and I think if you look at that Dallas run, unlike other runs, it was very much. It's really they got to the playoffs in 91. It's really those 4 years, 92, 93, 94, 95,
Yeah, that
and that's
dominant run.
it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And a lot of those guys were hurt. Aikman was hurt. Michael wasn't the same, but Emmitt yet still was consistent, still dominant. The guys who we think are the best on that offensive line never really played to get. Larry Allen came in 94. Emmitt already at that point had winning rushing titles and MVP, all these different things. Larry Allen really didn't get a good run with that other offensive line
Right.
that we're talking about. Eric Williams had a few good years, and then he got hurt. Stepnoski even got hurt this year. He's hurt for this game. And then after this game, he gets signed in free agency away. So, like, it kind of gets piecemeal. But, yeah, if you look at Emmitt's stat line, always just, over 1,000, 11, 12, 13, 1,500 yards and getting those touchdowns, even when the Cowboys weren't that great.
Yeah, no, he was again a great running back. I'm not here to like dismiss that, and I'm not here to act like he's not. I know I talk a lot of shit on him and whatever, and I am a Thurman Thomas fan, and I'll say that proudly. And I think Thurman Thomas, in my opinion, is a better running back. But Emmitt did a lot of great things. I for sure would say that. And this game that we're going to talk about, for me, at the time watching his games, I remember watching his game live. Like I gained a lot of respect for Emmitt Smith this game for sure. And, you talk about Warrior and things like that. And he was very durable. And again, I think it goes back to the point I was making. He really didn't he took hits. He's a running back. All those running backs were taking a lot of hits, especially Emmitt, because that Cowboys team, it was a running team. If you look at even this 93 season, Aikman threw for 15, 16 touchdowns, I think it was, something like that. And, so they were, play action, Novacek, Irvin on them curls, and Harper on the bomb every once in a while. Like that was this offense here. And Emmitt was a big part of that. No, I'm not going to knock that. And that offensive line was a big part of that. And, Moose Johnson is a big part of that. Like what fullback, got, is every even in road games that he would carry the ball, catch the ball, you hear the Moose chants and things like that. Like
Moose is the guy I say that's the defining. Moose was a great fullback.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's where like you want to. I'll give that argument more than the O line because Thurman had a heck of an O line. Barry Sanders had Lomas Brown, Kevin Glover. A dynamic offense. People want to like shortchange Barry like he didn't have anything. The big difference, people underrate Moose and how good Moose was. That I will say.
Nah, he's a great fullback.
Yeah, that's the big one, like having a fullback like Moose Johnson. But to me, you gotta Emmitt he's top 5 running back to me all time.
I'll give him top 10, top 8.
I know you're I can't put Thurman over Emmitt, and the reason why is this game does and shows what Emmitt had. We look at the clutch gene for quarterbacks. We don't really do it for other positions in football, which is a shame. But I feel like Emmitt had that.
I'll give him that.
Yeah, he had the intangible,
yeah.
and he had that when the big games came up on the road and the toughness. He showed that, and I think that's why, talent-wise, a lot of guys come out looking more flashy and more talented than Emmitt, for sure. But to do what Emmitt did in that clutch ability, and to do what Emmitt did where he could come out the backfield, but also was a blocking back. Could go back there, and you didn't have to worry about
him. 3-down back, yeah.
Like, that's, for me, Jose, people have different criteria for judging running backs, but that's huge for me.
Yeah, and I think, to your point about the Barry Sanders thing, I think it's very easy to keep Barry Sanders in your mind when you can go to YouTube and, pop in a 15-minute Barry Sanders highlight reel, and you're just like, wow. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's not too many running backs that you can do that with that in that era. I'll be honest, even me, I'm not watching a Thurman Thomas highlight reel. I'm not watching, you know what I'm saying? Like, every once in a while, you'll see it on, like, like on Twitter or whatever, like that Barry Sanders thing will come up, and you're going to watch it. You know what I mean? And so I think that's also a part of it, too. Like, you're right. Emmitt he wasn't like a super flashy guy. Like, he talked his trash, and, he can make a move here and there for sure. But I agree with that 100%. I think in big games, Super Bowls, ask the, I wasn't gonna say the Redskins, but ask the, the Bills. You know what I mean? Like, and not even the first Super Bowl, the second Super Bowl. Like, he killed them. You know what I mean? Like, it was that second half was Emmitt. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'll give him that 100%. In big games, he was coming up. When I think about Emmitt, this game comes up for sure. I mean, I hope for everyone it will come up. The one game that I first think about was against the Eagles, obviously, when he broke their streak of like holding running backs until like under 100 yards. I think it was like,
I think it was this year.
But their streak was like 70, 80, something like that, games where they kept, no one rushed over 100 yards.
I feel like it was this season. Was it earlier?
Was it another game? It might have been the year before. I can't remember the year, but his jersey was ripped. Like they at the end of the game, they panned to the sidelines and he was just kind of sitting there like just dead, man. Like, and it took that type of effort to break a streak like that against that great Eagles defense in the early 90s. And I remember that game. I was like, this dude, man, like dude is.
Was that at Philly?
It was in Philly, yeah.
Were they wearing blue?
I think so. I think they were.
I think that was 93.
It might have been
like 230 yards rushing or something like that.
Yeah, it was something crazy. And he killed the Eagles and he had a great game. I think of that first because I just remember that. Like, I was like, man, like, he's good, man. He's a good player. He's a great player, man. And then obviously I think of this game and I think of the Super Bowls and, but again, I agree. The clutch gene, quarterbacks, we always look at quarterbacks for that. This dude, Emmitt Smith, had that for sure.
Absolutely. And I think that's just what gets overlooked. And I think it's so interesting. It gets overlooked for a lot of this team, like these 90s Cowboys who and if people have listened to the show, check the archives, our episode on 90s Cowboys, one of our first episodes, or check them on the Leon Lett Thanksgiving game because we talk a lot about this season and what this team went through in that Leon Lett episode. So check those archives. But I think this team, because of Jimmy and Jerry, because of the personalities and the star, Jose, I think people overlook how tough and how gritty, physically and mentally, this team was. And I think about the big wins, like not the biggest were the Super Bowls, of course, but the greatest wins that the 90s Cowboys had, all on the road, all in tough conditions, all just getting it done, overcoming adversity. I look at it, if I have to rank them, I think 92 NFC Championship game. I'm going to put this game second, 93 Cowboys at Giants. And then I'm going to put 1991 when they stopped Washington. They gave them their first L, the undefeated year.
That's the first game I think about.
Yeah, those were all on the road, adversity, tough games. And people don't talk about that. When they talk about this team, it's just the talent and the flash and Jimmy and Jerry. This was a tough football team.
Yeah, they would definitely punch you in the face, And I also think offensively, they were really tough. They were really, really like hard-nosed. Defensively, again, and we've talked about this 100 times, like on this show, like this was for me, the first team where, again, for me, I'm not saying they are the first team. It's just, this is the first team I remember that. And with Jimmy Johnson, like emphasized speed on defense, you know what I mean? Like speed at the linebacker position, speed at the safety position. Like I just remember this Cowboys team was like, everybody was fast on defense. So for me, not that they weren't tough on defense, because this defense was great. Like they had a great defense, but they were just, for me, like my mindset with this Cowboys 90s teams, like this defense was like really fast and like they can just all get to the ball. When I think about this offense, man, like I just think of like they can just run it right down your throat. They can go on a 15-play drive and just throw it like 4 or 5 times, a couple play action passes, maybe a couple checkdowns to Novacek and maybe a couple slants to Irvin, but the rest of it, where they would just come down the field, they would just run on you. And, I remember games against those Packer teams when Reggie went to Green Bay and, how tough those games were. They were always running the ball, making sure, like that they would make the game easy for Aikman. And I'm not saying Aikman wasn't a great player either, but like it was just a lot of Emmitt. You know what I'm saying? Like those games at San Francisco, those early 90s, like a lot of Emmitt. That team, that offense was just, man, like they would just straight punch you in the face, man. And a lot of teams could not do anything about it.
I mean, I think that's a testament to Emmitt, though,
Mm. I
because
think that's a testament to the O line, though. That's
I
my
think it's a
opinion.
testament to Emmitt and seeing what his ability was. A lot of times, like the back, it's a back and forth thing. It's not just, and I get guilty of it too, where we just the O line makes the back, but a lot of times a lot of people like running back coaches, people like the back can make the O line, and if you just look at the years, Jose, Emmitt did not have a great O line for the majority of his career. Like the Cowboys weren't great. I think because like team in the '90s, we think, oh, it's not the '90s. It's a fine. Even I would say starting like '95, they were like kind of fading. When they won that third Super Bowl, they were fading fast. They got pretty lucky. But then by '96, it's like, man, Haley's done, Novacek, like the team's not the same. And he still was producing. He's still putting up, getting 300 carries a year. Like, it's just insane how many times he was doing that. And I think it's a testament to, because you have a guy like Irvin, you have a guy like Jay Novacek, and also you look at it, how many times Aikman was hurt? How many times Irvin got into situations in trouble and he wasn't there? Emmitt was the
Situations,
steady,
I like that.
situations. The situation. He's not the Michael the situation Irvin. So like Emmitt was the constant. Emmitt was there. He was the present. So I think that's a testament to him.
Yeah, he was definitely durable. I can't remember too often, you know, Emmett was out for long stretches of time, especially them early '90s, and they rode him. I will give him that too. Like 300 carries, 295, 250 plus, like, and he was throwing in there 30, 40 catches. You know what I'm saying? Like, so he handled the ball a lot, man. And again, I think that offense ran through him. Because Aikman was a great quarterback, but you take away that strong running game. I don't know if Aikman is throwing for 3,500 yards a season. Like, I don't know. Like, you know, I think a lot of it was due to like the play action and him being able to kind of stand there for a little bit and obviously read the defense and do what he has to do. But yeah, no, I know the offense ran through Emmitt. Like that's for sure. And I was mentioning some of those games earlier, like those really big moments where, they knew what they had to do, right? And the other team knew what they were going to do and they couldn't do anything about it. It was just all they were going to run it down your throat. And that's why, I'm obviously we're Eagles fans, right? We've talked about this on the show 1,000 times, but I don't have that like I hate the Dallas Cowboys thing. Like I don't like them, like what I'm saying, like they're a division rival, but like I have that for like the Giants. I don't know why. For me, it's different.
That's the same.
I just know a lot of actual New York people that live in New York Giants fans, and that's a different shit talk. There's a lot of difference for me with that. And this Cowboys team, I didn't hate them. I respected the hell out of them because I knew they were a great team. And again, he was a part of that at the time.
And I think that's what surprises me about Emmitt getting diminished over as time, because he was the one guy. Michael Irvin was flamboyant, and I respect Michael Irvin as a player.
So do I.
But like you can understand why opposing fans didn't like Irvin. Jimmy Johnson was loud and boisterous. Jerry
Yep.
Jones, to this day still runs his mouth too much, probably. Aikman had that pretty boy kind of feel. It was very easy to be like, okay, Nate Newton got brought up by John Madden all the time, or Bill Bates and Kenny Gant. Like, oh,
Bill
I
Bates.
got it. But with Emmitt, he was the one guy it seemed like even like their biggest, whether you were Washington, Philly, the Giants or the Niners, you respected Emmitt Smith. And that's why I'm kind of surprised. Like he's just getting knocked down and diminished.
Yeah, I think it's just that narrative that, he was running behind an all-time great O-line. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I hear it, you see it a lot. Like, you see it on social media. I've seen them have those conversations, and, fair or not, I don't know. But that's definitely happening, and I think he's definitely feeling that. Because if you think of, and I'm not saying us, right? But I'm just mean like your average fan. Like, if you think of guys like Walter Payton, right? We always think about how bad those offenses were. And I know we talked about, check the archives. We definitely dove into that 85 Bears team, and you've talked about how great that offensive line was. And, but for his entire career, that was, offensively, everybody looked at that team like it was just it was just Walter Payton and that was it. Like if you think of running backs like that, those great running backs, people don't look at that with Emmitt, I think. You know what I mean? Because again, like, they look at all the talent that was around him. Even you talked about Barry Sanders. I agree. When Detroit, when they had Scott Mitchell, Herman Moore, like they had all these guys, a good offensive line. They were playing that run and shoot offense. There was a lot of space for Barry to run. You couldn't load the box because if you did, like they were able to throw the ball on you. You know what I mean? Like they were playing on that turf. It was set up for Barry at that time, right? Like if you think of Thurman, right? Like that K-gun, all that offensive around him, he had a great offensive line, great wide receivers, Jim Kelly, like it was just a lot of offensive that if you look at them the way you look at like certain players, it just wasn't the case. And if you look at Emmitt, I think a lot of people just look like, dang, look at all that talent on the field. It was easy for him to do what he did.
But to your point, that's my thing. Like I think who would you put up the great backs? I think Walter had a good run with not having great talent, but then in the '80s he did. It did turn around for him, and he got it. But the guy who I think many, and I would call the greatest, Jim Brown, a lot of great talent around him.
Yeah.
Talent,
Hall of Fame quarterback. Yeah, like it's
O.J. Simpson. That offensive line, we got 2,000 yards. That was a heck of that. The electric company, they called it that for a reason. He had a Hall of Famer on his O-line. I just think whoever you want to put up there in that elite category, look at Terrell Davis when he's on elite like there, but that offensive line when he got 2,000 yards was something else, man.
That offense in general, yeah.
So I just think any back you're looking at, what Dorsett had, what Marshall Faulk had, just anybody, they're going to have talent. And something that's interesting to me is there was some buzz the past couple weeks. I guess it might have been by the time this comes out, like 2 weeks ago, when Randy Moss went on, I don't know if it was on his show or he went on some podcast, he said he was the greatest receiver of all time.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of debate. A lot of people were like, what about Jerry Rice? And I say Jerry Rice is number one in my. I don't want to assume. I think you feel the same way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But we don't ever say Jerry Rice though. Like he had Montana and Steve Young. Like we don't hear that argument.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's why I think it's just we're not like he had Montana and Young, but it's like we do hear that for Emmitt, and I think we just get misled. There's some who maybe don't have but there's no great players to me who didn't have great talent around them in some capacity. You know
it's
what
like
I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the MVP talk now, right? Like people go, oh, well, look at his team. How much help does he need? And it's just like, well, when you're an MVP, like you're going to have a great season and you're going to need a lot of help winning those MVPs, right? Like if, you talk about Mahomes and all those years, you got Tyreek and Kelsey on, great offensive line. Like you definitely need talent to succeed. Like, I'm definitely not saying that. Like, but
I'm not you. I just
no. Yeah. No, I'm not. I got you. But yeah, I just again, that's my opinion. I just think what I see and hear, like, unfairly, right? But I just think that's where people go, and I don't know. I do feel bad for Emmitt because he had a long career and very productive career, right? Hall of Fame, he deserved all of that, But I just think a lot of these guys and the big names, they throw people off.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's unfair. I think it's wrong because I think we just really diminish. Talk about a record that won't be broken.
Yeah.
He broke the all-time leading rusher. That was 2002. So we're 21 years and counting, which, there it was, I believe, 18 years from Walter to Emmitt, 84 to 02. So now we're 21 years, and there's no one close.
No
one currently playing who's close to getting that record. And I don't know because, it took LeBron almost 40 years in basketball to overtake Kareem. And so I'm not going to say it'll never be broken, but Jose, I think we could get something like that where we're going to get into 30 years, maybe 40 years, and he's still going to be the all-time leading rusher.
Yeah, and we started the show with that, right? Like how the position has been diminished greatly in the past decade. You know what I mean? Like you really don't see that guy with 300 plus carries anymore. And if you do, it's at a big time. Well, not a big time, but it's, the next season, statistically, like it'll show like it doesn't pan out for them too well. Like this, and it's not a difference in the league. It's not a difference in the athletes. Like it's just a difference in philosophy in a lot of these, offenses where, you can get a guy, you can get two guys, right? Like you can get one guy to carry the ball and have like 6, 7, 800 yards, and you get a rookie on a rookie deal, and you can run him to the ground until that deal is up, and then you can move on and draft another guy. Like it's just, from a position where I remember growing up, like I wanted to be a running back. Like that was the position, like that people talked about. That's the names that everybody remembers, and to today is not nowhere near that. Like you're telling people not to play that position, and yeah, I agree that record ain't going anywhere for a long, long time unless there's a dramatic shift in philosophy, which I don't even see happening ever.
Yeah, and then also you have to be able to have the durability.
Right.
That's one thing. You have to be able to take the punishment and the pounding, and I think it's very hard for guys to do what Emmitt did, which he got a lot of carries in college before he got to the league, and then to be guy getting over 300 carries so many times in the league, it's just impressive. One thing for those, I'm connecting it to basketball. Remember when Michael Jordan looking for his first title, it was you can't lead the league in scoring and win a championship, and he broke that, smashed that whole stigma. Going into the 90s, that was the case. You can't lead the league, have the leading rusher on your team and win a Super Bowl. And Emmitt in 92, he smashed that stigma and really kind of changed how we look at it, getting over 1,700 yards, 18 touchdowns that year, help them win that first title. But, I look at just what the 93, the next year, when and he says it. People say a contract holdout, but he'll say, I didn't have a contract. And he wanted to be compensated like the best back in football because leading the league in rushing the previous 2 years, helping him to win a Super Bowl MVP guy. And Jerry wasn't willing to do that. And they started off that year 0-2, Jose. And it was kind of like, oh, the defending champs are in trouble. And I think people forget that point. Like the defending champs were in trouble.
Yeah, and that was the talk. That was the buzz. Like Cowboys are done. This run is over until they, not even until they get Emmitt back, right? Because a lot of times you see guys hold out and they come back and they get hurt or things like that. That just happens often to this day, And I remember that season again, and I was like, man, they're 0-2, and that talk was like, we're not signing him for what he wants, like. And that talk shifted very quickly after that second loss. You know what I mean? And I just remember going from that until that week is like, oh, Emmitt might sign this week. And then, he signs. And then, boom, they take off. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, I'll give him that too. Like that offense and it was Emmitt. You know what I'm saying? Like Michael Irvin was pushing for him hard. And, I know they were boys and all that, but still, like I think he understood. Like, we need this guy back here, and they got him back, and look what happened, right? They win the Super Bowl. So
yeah, and you look at it, he led the league in rush. He missed those 2 games.
I know.
Winds up starting. They say he played 14, started 13 of them. Still gets Jose 1,486 rushing yards.
Yeah,
and that's missing the first 2 games. Getting almost 1,500 yards rushing, and it showed what that team had went through. They go on this great run. They lose the Leon Lett, the Thanksgiving battle to the Dolphins. And then Jimmy Johnson said, after that, we have to win out. And the Giants were coming too. The Giants, first year, the Dan Reeves, they had gotten the Phil Simms, Jeff Hostetler stuff under wraps. That's where they looked at it and they said that they had to win out. And that really sets up this game. It's funny. It's just like now, like there was 18. They had 18. We have 2 bye weeks, which is weird.
I remember that. Yeah.
It's so strange, But it sets this up perfectly, man. That this was a playoff game.
Oh yeah. It was it felt like a big game. Absolutely.
It was huge. And so Cowboys at the Giants. The winner gets home field throughout. The loser winds up being a wild card team. Jose, in my opinion, if the Cowboys lose this game, we don't have the dynasty.
That's a big one there.
Which is
So
why I give Emmitt so much credit.
he knew it was a big game. Like, I absolutely, and I don't think you're going to risk your career. Like, let's be real. Like, it's a shoulder injury like that for a running back. Who knows what he could have kept doing to that thing, and or what he did to that. You know what I'm saying? If he made it worse or whatever the case, man. Like, because you can see. I remember watching that, man, and I remember when he fell, and I was like, he's not getting up. You know what I mean? Like, and he was hurting. Like, he was in a lot of pain. And I like I said, man, I gained a lot of respect for Emmitt Smith watching him play that game, man, because I was like, that was a tough one. But yeah, that was a big, big, big game, and I remember sitting there watching it. Pat Summerall, John Madden were on the call, right? It's the NFC East game, so it was huge, and it was big for both teams.
Because Dallas, then that means 2 years in a row that the Cowboys have to go to San Francisco and win.
Right.
And I think a big thing that happened that helped with the 93 championship game is San Fran had to go to Dallas to play them.
Yeah.
Do you really think if they lose this game, no bye week, no rest time, so Emmitt with that shoulder is bad, then they get the Vikings. The Giants played the Vikings. I think they beat the Vikings.
Yeah.
But then you're on the road at San Fran. Do they beat San Fran on the road in 93?
I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like, to this point, it hadn't been done. You know what I mean? Like, and, without that week off, does Emmitt even play the next week? You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think they beat the Vikings either way, if he doesn't play or not. But that was, I remember watching this game and I was like, yo, if they lose, like, he might not play next week.
Right.
And that was just like a holy shit type of thing. Like, damn, like, what's going on here? Like, what's going to happen with this Cowboys team? But I agree. I don't think they're going into San Fran and beating the 49ers.
A second year in a row. So, I mean, how can you not look at this, though, and just that puts even more weight on this game and more weight on this performance by Emmitt because everything's on the line here. Is Jimmy in the Ring of Honor now if they have that one ring? I don't think so. Like so much has changed. So many things are looked at differently if Emmitt doesn't, because you look at it, the defense played really well, but they also they gave up some stuff and they played still well, but the Giants wind up tying it. They're down 13-0. They wind up coming back to make it 13-13 in that second half.
Yeah.
But you look at it, nobody else is doing anything on the offensive side of the ball. It is all Emmitt Smith.
Yeah. And then to even your point, like, if they don't win this game, like we already know, right? Like, they beat the 49ers. Do the 49ers do what they did for 94? I don't think so either. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many things that could have shifted if they lose this game. You know what I mean? Like, so that now you got my mind going through all of them, like, scenarios and stuff. So, but yeah, like, I remember him getting hurt and I was like, they might lose this game. You know what I mean? Because you're right. It was a tight, defensive game. None of the offenses were really doing much. Both teams ran the ball really well. You know what I mean? Like, Hampton had over 100 yards, 30 plus carries. Ronnie Hampton. I mean, I liked Ronnie Hampton. He was a big dude, man. He was he was a really good running back. I'm not gonna call him a great running back, but they both were running the ball really well. Phil Simms had a decent game. Ed McCaffrey, I forgot Ed McCaffrey was on this team and, playing for the Giants. So, yeah, it was just a punch you in the face type of game, and both teams were back and forth. But this performance by Emmitt was an all-time great performance, in my opinion.
One thing before we go, into the game and stuff like that, would you call the old Texas Stadium, you call that a dome? I know it had the whole hole.
No, I don't call that a dome.
Not a dome?
Nah, I don't think so. Because if it rains, it's still getting in there. You know what I mean? Like, so.
But it's like the little patch.
Yeah.
Little, like, patch thing.
That's for God. That's for God to watch them play.
That's what they say. That's what they said. I remember all that.
Yeah.
But I just think we also give a lot of credit Dallas is warm. They had some peculiar days like we saw with the Leon Lett
Yeah,
game, but it's a
yeah,
warm weather for them to build that team like a warm weather team in dome-ish.
right.
They played it in a dome-ish kind of thing. You look in the 2000s with the Colts, they were built for that dome.
Yep.
And if they had to travel, it was like you didn't like the Colts out there. I look at it like giving Jimmy and Jerry and the Cowboys credit for building that team up and not being like we're going to build it for, hey, we're on this AstroTurf in a dome-ish kind of stadium. We're building this team up to go into Philadelphia, into
Yeah.
Washington, into the Meadowlands, and to kick butt. Like, how many times do you see that? You don't really see it too often.
Right, right. Because they know they had to go play at San Fran. Those were going to be big games, and those were a lot of times a lot of ugly, muddy games. You know what I mean? With that weather in
True.
San Francisco and stuff, man. Like, Green Bay eventually. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they had to shift that there too. And you're going to Green. And I know this is later in the '90s, more towards the middle of the '90s, but either way, you still got to go and play those games. So I agree. Like, that philosophy. I think defensively, maybe that philosophy was there, but overall, I still think like they did not build that team for like that dome-ish type of thing, like the Rams, like Colts, teams like that. Like, no, they were more of a real like old school NFC East type of club. Like, again, like we talk about Washington and the Hogs and how they were built, the Giants, how they were built running the ball, great defenses. The Eagles with great defenses. Like, so many of these teams, man, were built that way because of where they were playing and where they had to go. But the the Cowboys, I think, did a tremendous job, obviously, doing that a lot better than some teams. But even, defensively, we could talk about all that speed, but that defensive line, they had some big boys on there, man. Like, you get Russell Maryland, Leon Letts, and, we look at
Chad Hennings.
right, Chad Hennings and Jim Jeffcoat. Like, he looked like Reggie White in this game, but Charles Haley is not looked at that way, but still, the rest of the team is, and they had some big guys up front.
Absolutely. And I think even the previous the 80s Niners, not built to really go on the road in those cold, like
Right.
that's not what they were built on.
Yeah,
And
smaller offensive lines, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
to get out in space. I agree. Yep.
so it's like I think that's also doesn't get talked about, and I'm surprised it's not copied more,
Right.
or it wasn't copied more of like building your team, like building a team that can go out in the conditions. Even though there's more dome state, I know we have that more, but you still like football's built for conditions, and building a team that's like not for that. I'm just surprised that teams, like you said, the Rams, the Colts, so on, even to this day, like teams are just building it for that indoor. And I'm like, but yeah, if you don't get that home
Yeah.
field, you just suffer. Like you are outmatched and outgunned. And I give Jimmy Johnson a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I remember watching these '90s Cowboys, and I remember, when they played in the elements. The one player I remember always having a tough time was Aikman,
Yeah.
and he's always on the broadcast. Oh, Aikman has a tough time throwing the wet ball and stuff like that. And I was like, maybe they're over exaggerating. Nope. Like, he would really struggle, and I think those games, to your point, to your guy, I think they leaned on Emmitt a whole lot more. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he had to, because again of his struggle. So I agree. I agree that, and I think that's more Jimmy than Jerry, but I just
Yeah.
think Jimmy's vision, what he had for this team and what he was going to do, because he had that 1-15 team, right? Like, he had a lot of things that he can build. He did a great job doing that.
You look at it, Troy Aikman threw for over 20 touchdowns one time in his career.
Right. He's a Hall of Famer, and yeah, that blew my mind. I remember I saw that a couple like years ago, and because I always thought like Aikman, big games, and you always seen the Cowboys, and looking at those stats, man, like he definitely, yeah, he got a lot of love for being a Cowboys quarterback.
He did. He really did. And I think that's just what's odd to me is he got a lot of love, and he couldn't go out there and do it. He will say that a wet ball, he couldn't throw it. And those and not saying that you need, the game wasn't like that, throwing it 30 times
Right.
going, like in New York in December and January. Like I get that, but yeah, if the Cowboys had to lean on Troy Aikman passing the ball this game, if we go to this game in particular, they not
Nah,
winning that game.
it ain't happening. Nope. And like what they scored 16 points. You know what I mean? Like, and Emmitt had the game that he had, and we'll get into his game in a little bit. But yeah, they weren't doing that. Absolutely not. And it's not like this is the '86 Giants. You know what I mean? They have LT, but Eric Williams is handling LT pretty well by himself this game, and it. Greg Jackson and as a safety, like is he a great player? No, like what I'm saying, like he's a decent player. I remember he came to the Eagles a couple years after, and that this defense wasn't what you think of the Giants, and what I'm saying, like when they're successful in that defense, they went 11-5 this year and they had a good year, but this wasn't that type of defense. They did draft Strahan this year, but it's not like he was taking over and doing all that in his rookie year. I think they drafted Jesse Armstead this year
They
too.
did, yeah.
So yeah, like they were building, but it wasn't what we thought, and they still struggled big time in this game.
No. So let's look at it though. So this game with Emmitt coming in here and they're running the ball well, and Emmitt,
Oh yeah,
he gets over 100 yards rushing in the first half, Jose.
yeah,
Like he's turning it out pretty well. So you have to give it you see the final numbers were a good amount of them were also before the shoulder injury, so he's playing well.
yeah.
So not I want to at least over half of them are before he gets hurt in late in the second quarter. That tackle by Greg Jackson, but he catches that 5-yard touchdown pass. They're up 13-0, or 10-0 when he goes down, and like you said, that whole game, the whole stadium, everything, the feeling the fans are kind of cheering.
Yeah.
When you see Emmitt when he's laying on that ground, and there's a kind of a uh-oh feeling on that Cowboys sideline when Emmitt takes that hard tackle. It didn't look that bad, but it's just like Greg
Right.
Jackson just kind of like rode him, trying to make sure he felt him, but hitting that cold Meadowland turf in early January, it'll do that to you.
Yeah, very unforgiving. It may be, but it may be better turf than they have now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't. It looked like a normal tackle. The long, big run. I thought he was going to break that, but again, like, Emmitt is known for his speed, right? Like we,
No.
you know what I mean? Like we're not going to give him that. And Greg Jackson did a good job. Took a great angle and got him and just tackled him. It looked like a normal tackle, like you said, Deremy, and he just landed awkwardly on that shoulder. As soon as he landed, you can see he was in a lot of pain, though. They didn't even have to announce anything. He just rolled over, and his legs were kicking. Like he was just in a lot of pain, man. And you thought right there, it was just like the season is over. You know what I mean? Like this Cowboy season is done. Their run is done. They're not getting back to the Super Bowl again, and this year anyway. And next thing you know, he's coming back.
Well, he said the training staff for the Cowboys got creative. I think they took like
Yeah.
knee pads,
Yep.
cut holes in them, and kind of put them up there and like stuffed. And they, Emmitt had the joke. If you watch America's Game for '93 Cowboys, they said you're gonna feel some discomfort, and
Yeah.
he's like, oh really? Pretty much saying pay. And the Giants, and that's part of the game. They were targeting. If you watched it post that injury, they're targeting that shoulder. That's what makes this even more impressive. They're giving him the ball, and then the Giants they're making sure to hit that shoulder to make him feel that.
They were hitting him late. They were landing on him. I think the first run, it might have been Greg Jackson again. He like slings him to the sidelines, and you see Emmitt like a roll, like a tuck and roll type of thing. That I was like, every time and this is the crazy part. Like you say, they were up 10-0 when he got hurt. Giants scored 13 unanswered in the second half, right? Because that's they felt that momentum, and the Cowboys defense was playing well, but every time he got the ball, I cringed in that second half, man. Like it was just, I was like, how? And he didn't just get the ball a couple times. He wasn't out there as a decoy. He got the ball, and I'm just watching this and I'm like, why are they giving this dude the ball? And he would just get tackled, slowly get up, or somebody would pull him up. Michael Irvin half the time was pulling him up. and he was just limp back to that huddle, man. Like I said, I gained a lot of respect this game for Emmitt for sure.
I think not that running backs are tough, man, and
Yeah,
all the guys we've named as great backs, and even the ones that we didn't name, that's such a tough position because you're taking the pound. Outside of to me, the trenches, the O line, D line, they're getting the pounding every
every
play.
play.
The running backs right behind it, where they're getting the pounding. So all of them are tough, but honestly, Jose, I think of maybe one or two other guys who would have a performance who would do this, where they're not a decoy, they're taking it. I think of Walter Payton. I think of Jim Brown. They're the only two
Yeah,
guys I'm thinking of who are giving you a performance like this.
this is an epic performance. Like in terms of like showing your toughness, putting your team literally on your back. You know what I'm saying? Because again, they were struggling. We've been talking about it. Like offensively, Aikman wasn't really doing it. The passing game was okay. They were more running the ball, and then that shifted when Emmitt was out. And the Giants started putting pressure on them, and he comes in, and the game shifts again. And then now everybody's like, "Oh, he's back!" Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it felt like that. I was like, "Wow, he's coming back." They now have a shot, but he's too banged up. They're not going to be able to do that. And then he was getting the ball, and it's a performance I would never forget. Like, I'll be straight up there. I mean, like, I would not. I remember watching this at home. I was watching this whole game, and I was just like, "Wow!" Like, this dude literally put his team on the back, and my hat's off to him.
I just think if you were around, if you're my age and your age and older, it's a performance you can't forget. And I think it's up there with, the Jack Youngblood in the
Yep.
NFL. I honestly, Jose, I'm not going to say on this only because that Jordan's flu game is in the finals. It's in the actual finals,
Yeah.
but it's that type of performance
Oh,
because
absolutely. Yeah.
it's on that kind of level. Like, I'm not going to say it's over Jordan's flu game, but to me, this game should be talked about. And I'm surprised it's not, seeing how it's the Cowboys, Dallas, the
Giants.
NFL,
Yeah.
who they be. You said the Giants. That's why, we saw 30 years of that game. It's like, oh, that's a must we got to do. Because how is this game not talked about more, and how just like younger generations know Jordan's flu game, younger generations should know Emmitt Smith in this shoulder game, against the Giants.
Yeah. Flu game is obviously an epic game, but you know, Jordan is not getting tackled. You know what I'm saying?
True.
Like, and it's just this is a remarkable performance, man. Like, and it's different if he was a quarterback. I've seen quarterbacks get hurt. I remember when I was a kid, Steve DeBerg broke his like finger or something like that, and he could barely hand the ball off. He was handing it off like backwards or something. He was doing something weird, and I was like, man, like that's crazy. Like, I'm not playing with a broken finger or whatever. Like, it was just like, and it was like it was throughout the rest of the season, and when he was with the Chiefs. And I was just like, man, but he's not getting hit every play. You know what I mean? Like, he had the option to throw the ball, right? Or the one that he's running, when they're running, he's handing it off. You know what I mean? Like, this guy was every time he touched the ball, he was getting hit by like 3 or 4 guys. You know what I mean? Because everybody knew he was going to get the ball. Or when it's a passing play, he may have to block. But he was going out, and Aiken was just checking it down. He was check down Troy that second half. It was the Moose Johnson and Emmitt Smith show, and sprinkled a little Jay Novacek in there, and he was just he wasn't running, just running. He was catching the ball. Again, it was an epic performance.
They use him the same way. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Nothing changed. Nothing changed.
kind of crazy that Jimmy and the coaching staff did that. But I remember in the late in the second half, one of the plays where they sacked Aikman. I think it leads to like the Giants tying it. Emmitt's back there trying to block, with one shoulder, and it's like and Emmitt was a hell of a blocker,
Yeah,
honestly. So
yeah.
that's typically a block he probably would have made, but he's doing it with one shoulder, and it's like, why are you putting him in that spot? But it's like they knew that he is what they had. If Michael Irvin was the heart of the dynasty because of just like his leadership and he was emotional, the engine that made this go was Emmitt Smith.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that. 100%. Because Irvin to me was the leader of this team. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
With his, situations and stuff like that, he was still. I would love Michael Irvin on my team. Like, you know what I'm saying? I remember watching this team and I was like, that's a bad dude right there. Like, I love Michael. I like Michael Irvin. I liked watching this game. I liked how he played, and he talked shit. He talked enough shit. Like, he wasn't Deion Sanders type of like trash talk, but he talked enough and he did the first down circle thing, like with the ball and dropped the ball every catch. And he was a great player too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I give Michael Irvin, almost called him Michael Jackson. Michael Irvin a lot of his credit. Michael Jackson was bad too, but yeah, I agree. I think Irvin was the leader. Emmitt was the engine, and I think the rest of it was, Jimmy Johnson and that talent. You know what I'm saying? Like, they had a lot of great guys on defense too, Ken Norton, Charles Haley, and a few leaders there. But yeah, I think it was Irvin, Emmitt. That was in pecking order.
Yeah. So, Emmitt winds up having 229 total yards offense in this game. And Jose, I think we're going to look at the final drive in overtime. The Giants, they were up 13-0. The Giants tie it up. They get 13 unanswered to send the game to overtime. And we're going to look at this final drive that, really this dynasty career defining drive for this 90s Cowboys team. Because I really do think if they don't win this game, we're not looking at this team in the same light.
Yeah, no, it was an all time great drive, man. And I give again Emmitt all that credit, man. Like, he's he's a bad dude, man. Seriously. Hold on, I'm having technical difficulties here.
No, it's no problem.
I got it. We're good.
But it's
They're just giving us 90s overtime rules. We ain't missing much. There we go. And that's how big it was. If the Cowboys win, they win the NFC East. Like, that goes to show you how big this game was.
And if the Giants would have won, they would have won the NFC East. And
yeah.
How much I know you love them. I love so many people love John Madden, Madden and Summerall, and everything. And I remember I had back in years ago, I had like one of John Madden's books, one of his books on tape. It was like, what was it? All Madden. Hey, I'm talking pro football, but I had like the cassette. I'm aging myself here. Had the radio, the boombox,
To
and the
the
cassette.
Walkman.
Yep. And I would like play it, whether I was going for a walk or, whatever, going to school, I would play it. And Madden talked, because Matt, like you said earlier, Madden and Summerall do this game for CBS. And they wind up, Madden said after this game, he rarely did this, but he went in to the Cowboy locker room and had to shake Emmitt Smith's hand. And he said that's the only time he really remembers doing that. But he was so impressed with how gutsy of a performance this was that he went down to the Cowboy locker room and had to shake Emmitt Smith's hand. I thought for John Madden to say that and to do that, that shows how impressive this game was.
Yeah. All those games that Madden has done and all these great performances that Madden has seen, as a coach, as a player. As a player too, as a commentator.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that to me says a lot. And again, I think a lot of America wanted to walk in that locker room and shake Emmitt's hand. You know what I'm saying? I know I would have. If I had the opportunity, I would have walked right up to him like, dude, like, you got that one, man. Like, that's a great performance, man. Like you said, he finished with 168 yards rushing, 61 receiving. Just a great performance. That's a
It's an
great game
all-timer.
right there, man. Yeah.
And we're looking at it here. In this, for young people or people who forget, this is the NFL overtime where just first two scores wins the game.
Yep.
So
Field goal, touchdown, didn't matter.
yep. So you're looking at it here. The Cowboys had to kick off. So Cowboys defense is up here first. And like you said, Rodney Hampton, the offense was struggling for the Giants in the first half. Second half they got going. Rodney has over 100 yards for the day.
Yeah.
But this defense was stingy too, man, and they had to really step up.
Yeah, especially this D line. They were putting a ton of pressure on Phil Simms, and this overtime here, they're keying on Rodney Hampton for sure. Like that's their weapon. You know what I'm saying? They had David Meggett, they had, like I said, Ed McCaffrey. Howard was the tight end. I liked him too. He was a decent tight end. And dang, seen them Bills trash them Colts 34-11. But
You
anyway,
love those Bills, man.
anyway, yeah, they were keying on them, and they every time, Phil Simms dropped back, they were getting there. That defensive line was definitely getting there. Jeff Cole had a great game. I just love Somerall's voice, man. It's just
2nd and 9. Sims.
yeah. Hampton and Emmitt had the same amount of rushes, and that again shows you this performance. And Rodney Hampton had 2 good shoulders. I think they both had 30 carries each.
Yeah. And credit, also you got to give credit to thinking about what Jimmy Johnson said this past weekend, the great player and the great coaches, because you look at it the year before when they won it, Dave Wannstedt's the D coordinator. He gets hired by the Bears. He
Yep.
leaves. Who steps in? The D line coach, Butch Davis, D
Butch Davis,
coordinator here,
yeah.
future Miami coach.
Yep.
So Butch Davis is the D coordinator for the 93 and 94 seasons here. So that great coaching tree, the great coaches that he had, kept it going.
Yeah. No, he definitely had a great coaches and with this 90s team for sure. Like these guys, he was just turning head coaches all over the place. Not to say they were all successful, but they got the opportunity. And I mean you gotta see why, right? Like how much success they have, and defensively they were a great defensive team. That people really really forget about that, like how great these defenses were. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't know why. Why do you think that is, Deremy? Like, I know they don't have like the LT or the Mike Singletary, right? Like, they don't have that big name that those teams back in the late '80s, early '90s had.
Yeah.
Reggie White's. You know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't have that one guy. They had Charles Haley, was a great player, but I don't even think anybody really looked at Charles Haley as like a Reggie White, a LT, even though he was a great pass rusher, great player. Why do you think these defenses, those early Cowboys defenses, don't really get talked about either?
If you're a great defense and you have a great offense, the defense to me will always get overshadowed. So the defenses that we look at, you look at the counterparts usually, and the offense either was definitely subpar or we thought, oh, they're good but not on that level. If you look on a team, because I think the '80s Niners get this too
Right.
in a way, and they have an
Absolutely.
all-time great guy with Ronnie Lott, but the '80s Niners had great defenses, but
Especially early '80s.
yeah, they get overlooked, and the defense has played great in all the big games. All those
Mm-hmm.
Super Bowls, the defenses did great. No one talks about it. We look because you have a West Coast offense here. Here you have the triplets. What do we think of the Cowboys? Jimmy and Jerry and the triplets, and that's going to overshadow Charles Haley. I feel is talked about, not Reggie White or LT, but people talk about Charles Haley big time, like really high, and his personality and antics. I mean, that's why he should have been a
Yeah.
first ballot Hall of Famer, but they
Right.
made him wait because of it. Um, I remember talking to Hall of Fame writer Ray Didinger. He worked for NFL Films. He, Philly writer, and right before the Hall of Fame, where Strahan, no, I think it was Jason Taylor was going in. It was that year, 2017. So the year that Jason Taylor was going in, it was talking about like different pass rushers, and he was like, yeah, Charles Haley had to wait even longer than like a Strahan, and Charles Haley's way better than Strahan. He said that, and I was like, and that shocked me because Strahan was great,
Yeah.
but I'm like, Charles Haley's way better than Strahan. I was like,
Yeah.
whoa,
No, I don't agree. And I love Diddy. I love Ray Didinger, man. Like
right.
I would have had to disagree there.
That's what I said. I was surprised. Like, really? Wait, I go, Strahan. He goes, no, Strahan's great. Yeah, you got to clean it up. But he said Charles Haley was way better, and I was like, ooh, that's close. So
Yeah.
Charles Haley was respected by a lot of people, but his antics, it got overlooked for a long time. So to answer your question, that offense gets it, and the big personalities on offense and all that stuff, that defense gets overlooked. They were number one in '92.
Yeah.
and the year before it had no Pro Bowlers.
Yeah, this year was different. His team had 11, I think.
Yeah, but just saying though, like how many times do you see the number one defense in the
Right.
league for the year have not one Pro Bowler? Like
Yeah, that's
that's
insane.
insane.
Yeah, but I agree with that. I agree with that because if you think of all the great defenses, like the historic great defenses, their offenses really were subpar. Like if you look at the 85, 86 Giants, right? You talk about them those 49ers team, that first Super Bowl, they won because of that defense. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
they had the number one defense. I think it was at 81, I think. They had the number one defense and they just did enough on offense to win the Super Bowl. But yeah, like all those great, like that Baltimore Ravens defense. Obviously, we all know historically that was a historically bad offense.
Yeah.
Even those early '90s Eagles, the offense they had Randall, but you know, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Hmm.
If Phil Simms thinking he's going somewhere, nope.
Nope. This winds up being his last year.
Yeah,
Him and LT. This is really an end of an era
yeah,
for these Giants in a lot of ways. But man, I just see that speed. This is a second year. Darren Woodson,
yeah.
who many say, I think is he? I think he did get to the finalists, right? Did he get to the finals for the Hall of Fame this year?
I believe so. Yeah,
So like a lot of people think he should be in, and I don't disagree with that. Darren Woodson was a great player, but this is him in his second year, and that speed he showed right there was unreal, just collapsing on Phil. But
yeah. He got there
Cowboy
quick,
D, yeah, Cowboy D held out. Giants had first possession. Cowboys defense makes him have to punt. So that's we gotta give credit to the D here because without the defense doing their thing, do we get to see this great drive that Emmitt has?
and it's a great drive. Like as you
Yeah.
see here, he's got 26 for 151, which is great. Gary Clark, dang, great performance already. If the game doesn't even go to overtime, but as you see here, look how he's running with that arm. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm glad if you've never seen his performance, that's another reason why we wanted to show this last drive to kind of like put like a stamp on what we're talking about. We have 4 interceptions against Detroit. I'm just talking shit on all these old games, but like at least you get a little visual here for those watching us on YouTube. Um, if you're listening to the podcast, please go on YouTube and watch this game. Like if you have, or at least this last drive, man. Like it's incredible what Emmitt does here. Goes on a little option route there over the middle. 2 guys just land on him. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
and the gut offensive lineman had to come pick him up.
Yeah, he's smart, and that's the thing about Emmitt, man. Like, I think that's just what it is. I think you're right with Barry. His highlight reel isn't great. Barry's the ultimate highlight reel,
Right.
but Emmitt just has the intelligence and the durability. You see what he's doing? He's kind of going down on that other shoulder then to kind of protect himself. If you look at these first 2 plays, like just the smarts, like he knows they're coming for it. So how do I land? I gotta go to my opposite shoulder every time.
So there, I mean, I also think like there's so many running backs that land in that category where it's like their highlight reel may not be as great as someone else's, and people just forget about them. Like I think the highlight reel does for Bo Jackson like too much almost. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I know he was great, and we all know that. We've talked about him on this episode
Check
on our pod, yeah, on
check
our
the archives.
check the archives. Damn it. But I think like a Marcus Allen the same way almost, and Marcus has big time plays and he's got highlights, but he was just so consistent. Damn, look at that, man, that blocking. He was so
Every play
consistent throughout the
has
year.
been to him. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Like, and I think Emmitt falls in that too. But yeah, it's been what, 5 plays, 4 rushes or 3 rushes, 2 passes to Emmitt.
No, and I think you're right. Marcus Allen's a good comparison. I think Marcus got hurt though. We know with Al Davis and the Raiders
Yeah,
and taking a good 4 or 5 years of his career really away.
right,
But
right,
Marcus Allen kind of has that. Absolutely. Marcus maybe the best goal line runner of all time.
right. Emmitt's up there too, though, with him. I'll
Mm-hmm.
say that. Emmitt got it in the end zone for sure. That's
And
why,
Troy
John.
did get that was a clutch throw to Moose Johnson.
I mean,
And
but you think of Moose like that, right? You don't think of like a receiver. He was a great receiver for a fullback.
he is the one, just like there's some things where I'm like, yeah, that's true. I don't go to the O-line. Even the O-line was a great O-line, but a lot of people had talent O-line. Moose Johnson, if for those who want to knock, or like not knock, but put Emmitt down, the Moose, that's the one I'll give him, because Moose was great. And I think maybe the most underrated player of the 90s Cowboys of this team was Moose Johnson.
Yeah. From this team, absolutely. Yeah. So important to what they do, man. And he was, again, I know people go to like Novacek as like that safety valve that Aikman had. I argue it was Johnson. You know, a lot of those checkdowns were to Moose Johnson over the middle or whatever the case. And he ran a curl route there. You know what I'm saying? Like that was like a 10-yard curl route. It's
Moose was
insane.
the safety valve for the team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was bigger than Novacek could be Aikman's safety valve. Moose was Aikman's safety valve, Emmitt's safety valve, the O-line safety valve, the receivers, the whole team.
You know, another catch, Emmitt. Two guys landing on him.
Look at the
Look at
pain he's
that.
in. He can't even, look at that. He's getting up on his own. Nobody helped him up there.
But he barely got up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were looking at Urban, but so how many catches Emmitt had in this game? Was it 10?
I believe 10 catches.
That's a great game, man. Like
Emmitt had, 10 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown.
he had a great fantasy day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, amazing fantasy day. He's leading to a championship.
Yeah.
If you have him this year.
Wow, look at LT, man.
And they're good. I mean, they're just Jose, like we said. I think it's Jimmy Johnson knew I have to go to my guy to get this win. There's nothing else. It's not Michael Irvin. It's not Jay Novacek. It's 22. Not
Yeah.
Alvin Harper, Freaky Harp. It's 22.
Yeah, I don't think Irvin caught a ball. That's a nice cut there, though.
Look at that run.
That was a nice cut back right over the middle. That was that play, though. That was a Cowboys play right there. That delayed draw.
Yeah, that lead draw, that was their bread and butter.
Yep, that was the play right there. And I'll go to your point again about the vision. Like if you run a delayed draw or lead draw, like that running back has an opportunity to kind of like pick and choose where he's going to go. If you know what I'm saying, if he has those options, and he did a great job with that. Showed a lot of patience on those runs. Like you got to be patient running a draw.
And if you can hear a little bit of just Summerall and Madden, they're just giving the props to Emmitt here.
Yeah, yep.
Like it's always fun, to see when you can tell in real time, you're looking back at it, that they knew they were watching a great performance. Like these guys knew this was all time.
Yeah, and you didn't have to be a Cowboys fan to understand that, you know. And he got hit there. He got hit pretty good there.
And he's trying to get some clock, trying to get close for the kicker, Eddie Murray, to get out there and try to, win this game.
I love the scene right here. There you go, John. Let him know. I love that line right there.
Look at it. He's just all in that pain. And that's true. Emmitt Smith got knocked for not playing those first two games.
Yep.
After leading the league in rushing 2 years in a row, after an MVP type year, after helping them win their first Super Bowl in 15 years, then to knock him, silence the critics right here.
Yeah, and then comes back with an MVP season.
Like, just silence the critics. And I think that's just what's beyond impressive to me, just what he did there.
I'm watching Wiener Dog Internationals here, but no, I agree, and it's funny. Like you watch these, you listen to these commentators, you watch games, and when you're watching something like all time great, like you can hear them, and they're talking about that, and I think here and rightfully so, and that's why I love Madden and Summerall, and I know you do too, Deremy. I know a lot of our listeners do. Like they knew what they were watching, and they would just stay steady giving them his props. And he walked off that field in pain too, man.
He left it all out there. I think, say, got if Eddie Murray were to miss this kick, I don't know if Emmitt had anything left.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if he misses this kick and the defense holds again. I don't know what Emmitt could have given you anymore. Like, you talk about leaving it all out there. He left it all out there.
Yeah, and this wasn't a gimme chip shot, not in the Meadowlands, and it was windy as hell that day.
And it needs to be said, it's up there with performances of when I never ever want to hear fans get upset when a player holds out.
Yeah.
This right here to me is one of the defining things that starts this. It's like, look at what he put on the line here. And imagine if he didn't go and get that and you heard what John said. They paid Aikman. He had a $50 million contract, and
Right.
Emmitt didn't get that.
Right. Right. And we've already laid out why it's in the pecking order. It's Emmitt, Irvin, Aikman,
Absolutely, because I mean they won playoff games with other people. Steve Berline won.
Yeah.
Bernie Kosar came in this year and won. And man, they knew. Look at the reaction though for a team that's the defending champs right here.
Yep.
After Eddie Murray hits that kick, you see the Giants are the flame. They knew, but you see how the Cowboys are celebrating. I mean, that's a team that they knew how big this game was.
Yep.
And obviously, I don't know. They thought, oh, for the dynasty, like we can do now, but they knew if they don't have this bye week, they don't get that week off, they're in trouble.
Yeah. Especially after this game. No, you can see LT, man, like this was a big loss for the Giants too. They had an opportunity, and just think about it. If they win this game, and you talk
Who
about
knows?
right, like you're looking NFC East champs, like that's a lot, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, and people talk about how great this Cowboys team was, and you can't name me 10 guys. I mean, we probably could, but probably a lot of our listeners could, but your average fan can't name 10 guys on that team. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was that team had a really good season, the Giants.
Oh, tremendous! Like Charles Haley and LT talking, two legends right there. But it's just that's what made the Leon Lett mistake so bad.
Right.
Was that it put him in this situation. And, you listen to that episode, we talk about how clutch the Cowboys were and how clutch Leon winds up being.
Yeah.
And people don't tell that story. But they were in a tough spot. That's why Jimmy said after Thanksgiving, if we win out, we'll get our stuff accomplished. So they knew they gave the Giants life, and they had to win out after Thanksgiving in '93 to get this done. So they did it. They won out.
Right.
That Thanksgiving, that Leon Lett game was the last loss of the Cowboys season that year.
Yeah, and he was exactly right. Right. If you win out, we'll be all right. We'll take care of everything. And they did exactly that. And they beat this feisty Giants team, and obviously they had a bye, and then they win divisional
over Green Bay,
right, and then play the 49ers in the championship game. And just think about those two wins right there. Like, you had a young Green Bay Packers team who was coming, right? Like that thing, and I'm not calling them a dynasty, but they were a really good team throughout the mid 90s, towards the end of the decade, and we all know what San Francisco was at this time. They were a really great team, and great offense, and they was just a overall like one of the best teams in the league. So to beat those two teams, that was still an impressive run there. And then they beat the Bills, obviously, in the Super Bowl, who were the best team in the AFC for this chunk of time for the most part. So it was still like, again, you look at Emmitt, what he did and what this Cowboys team did, like even that little playoff run, man, where they beat some really good teams, man. You got to give your hats off to the Cowboys for that, man.
So I'm going to ask you just a fun hypothetical. We talk about this is honoring 30 years of this great game. 30 years of this team, which I think the 92 team was probably better when the first year, but what the 93 team went through, the obstacles, being the first team 0-2 to win the Super Bowl, Emmitt's holdout, Jimmy and Jerry bickering, Leon Lett's misfortune, Emmitt's shoulder injury, all these things, Troy Aikman concussion in the championship game, all these different things that they were able to win. Now look at that, Jimmy getting honored this past weekend with the Ring of Honor, rightfully so. We've talked about it where if the Cowboys would have lost this game, we think they probably don't win the Super Bowl. Does Jimmy Johnson still leave if 93, now they won it in 92, but they don't go back to back? Let's say they lose to San Fran in the divisional, right? Does Jimmy Johnson still leave, you think?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think winning back to back made the decision to leave a lot easier. I'll 100% say that because again, it's to where like you started at 1-15 and you built this dynasty now. Well, at 2 Super Bowls is not a dynasty. Back to back is a
Dynasty.
Yeah, a big piece of that. But
I think back to back gets it to you.
Two of them, I don't know. I think I need one more. This
I
dynasty,
think
they're a dynasty, but
yeah,
I don't know if back to back gives you a dynasty.
I look at back to back.
I think it's a huge. I think you're like 90% there. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know.
Yeah, I would give it to you. It's not the greatest dynasty, like the Broncos in the late '90s. I still call that a little dynasty, but not the great. It's not like up there. It's not up there with like the Patriots or the Cowboys or the Niners or the Steelers. But I give it to you.
We'll talk about that another day. To answer your question though, I don't see it though. But I think if they lose, I think it's like you got to finish this. You know what I mean? Type of mentality. I think the decision. So I say, I mean, it was a lot going on, but if they lose, I don't think he can leave with that taste in his mouth. You know what I'm saying? Like the type of coach Jimmy Johnson was and all the stuff you read about and hear about, I don't think so. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that winning the back-to-back made it easier for him to go, all right, I did what I had to do here. I'm done. I got to move on. What about you, Deremy?
I think he comes back for one more year.
Right.
Because I think it's fractured. If you look at 93, it was rough. Jimmy and Jerry it was on shaky grounds throughout the year. But a lot of the things that kind of put it over the edge, I think it's tough. I think 94 in his mind is his final matter. I think 94, no matter what happens, and he says, let's go all out. Let's try to get 2 out of 3, and I'm done. Because Jerry's comments, Jerry doesn't make that comment about I could hire 500 coaches to lead it. I think if they won in 92, but they lost 93.
Right.
I don't think he's saying that. You know what I mean? Like, but after back-to-back titles, oh yeah, and some cocktails. 500 coaches could do this. They're not getting the whole pomp and circumstance praise like that. The whole toast at the owners meeting and did Jimmy toast him back or not? Is he toasting the Cowboys when you just lost in the divisional round, maybe? Or wild card, whatever round? Are you toasting like that? I don't think so. Are you feeling like it's so easy after you did win one, but then you lost the next year? Back to back. I believe definitely Jerry thought, I don't want to say he thought it was easy, but that, yeah, he could do this and he wanted to do it. So I think Jimmy comes back. I think a lot of history has changed if Emmitt Smith doesn't do what he did January 2nd, 1994.
So a hypothetical to your hypothetical.
Mm-hmm. And back-to-back definitely is a dynasty, man.
Well, I don't know. I look at the Detroit Pistons as a dynasty. I'll say that in NBA. I don't know. I don't look at that Broncos as a dynasty.
I do, because also you got to have. So they look at 96. The Broncos were a great team. They got upset
We couldn't leave this alone. Like we just couldn't do it.
In
Y'all, we couldn't do it.
97 you win, 98 you win, and in 99 also Elway's gone, so the team was different. Elway's gone, so I do look at it differently, and I do think to be a dynasty, definitely an automatic thing is in that run you got to go back to back.
I agree with that. I
So
think
I
back
think
to back is essential in a dynasty.
so I think that's kind of where I look at it. Like you got to do so. Then just because you went back to back, if the Braves would have beat for people listening, we're going to use different sports. In '96, the Braves won '95. In '96, they beat the Yankees, and then they don't win anymore, right? No more world titles. Are they not a dynasty? Look at what they did throughout the decade and stuff. Like,
Yeah, I think that's a tough one though, because they went 10 years with
still,
just greatness. I'm
this
trying to think
Cowboy
of
team
another.
really went 4 years.
Right.
Like, it was really quick. They went 4. So,
I don't know. I can't. I don't know. I don't think. To me, I think again, in my criteria, a back to back is essential in a dynasty. At least one. You know what I mean? Like, you need one more. One more.
is it just the Broncos you're looking at? Because you gave the Pistons it in basketball.
Because I'll also say like the Pistons were close like before the year before when they lost, right? I think was it the year before they lost to the
Yeah,
Celtics?
88.
Yeah,
Well,
like they
88,
were
also the Lakers.
right. So it's like I don't know. I give it to them because they could have won it the year prior to them going back to back, and then they go back. So they went to 3 title games in a row. I just look at that a little differently. I don't know why.
Yeah, I add that in, and I think Denver. If Denver was like whatever, Denver was the favorite in '96.
Yeah,
Denver was like, were they 13-3? That was
I
a
think
heck of.
so. That was a good team.
They got upset by Jacksonville. That's how a lot of people feel like the Patriots, the Parcell, they got in because Jacksonville. Like a lot of people wonder if Denver wins, Denver would have went that year. So I
And
just
probably
think,
would have won that
yeah,
too.
yeah, they were the odds-on favorite. So they had a great team in '96. They got upset 97, 98, and then Elway retires. So you don't see it go that. It's a new team. TD gets hurt. It's all different. So I give that run for
I
the
gotta think. I
Broncos
gotta
too.
think this all the way through because I'm just trying to. In my mind, I'm trying to think of like back to back. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough one for me. You got to give me one more, man. I need one more.
One more example.
No. I need one more championship. To back, and I need.
So you got to have 3.
Yeah, that's my criteria.
But the Braves would have been it, and the Pistons were it.
That's the only 2 I can really.
But you
think
got to
of.
have 3.
Gotta. I mean, do you give? All right. I don't know we're going like super like left field.
Yeah, it's fun though.
Do you think this Chiefs team is a dynasty? Because in your criteria, they are.
They haven't gone back to back.
Oh, they didn't go. I'm thinking 2 championships. Never mind.
Yeah. I call this a run, because they've 3 Super Bowl appearances.
I call this a dynasty.
In what, 4 years? 20, 21, 22, or 19, 20. Yeah, so 3 Super Bowl appearances in 4 years, 2 wins. I call it a dynasty.
And a lot of success, like longevity. Like
yeah, but even because a lot of that was Alex Smith. If you look at division titles.
Yeah.
So I look at just like the Reed Mahomes right now. I don't think I don't think the Chiefs are going back this year. I mean,
no, I don't think so either. If they do, that's very impressive.
It's the most impressive of all of it. So I don't think they are, but I think this is definitely dynasty. And they haven't gone back to back. Back to back with they haven't gone back to back.
No.
Super Bowls.
They went back to back Super Bowl appearances.
Yeah, but not back to back wins.
Right.
I call the Houston Rockets a dynasty.
See, I don't. Like, oh my God, this could be like another episode. Like, I don't. I don't.
I definitely do.
Ugh.
You keep that reign you're not 1 year. You keep it for multiple years. You do. I call the '70s Dolphins a dynasty.
Yeah, I call them a dynasty too, but that's because again, like I can't call the Rockets a dynasty though. I just can't. I can't do that.
But
Like
you can call the Dolphins one. Why?
because I think longevity, like their success went throughout. Like you know what I'm saying, they had years of success. No.
Mm. They went to 71, 72, 73 Super Bowls. 74, they lose to Sea of Hands, and that was it. Those guys go to the world. They lose Warfield, Kick, and Zonka. So 3 Super Bowl appearances in a row for sure, but 2. How can you in 2 Super Bowl wins? But how can you call the Bills a dynasty of 4 in a row but not winning it? But then you can't call back to back of winning it. You know what I mean? That's just where I look at it. Like you have said, other people, the Bills with 4 in a row, but they don't win as a dynasty. But then the Houston Rockets going back to back isn't, or the Broncos going back to back isn't. Like I think you gotta give it.
I'm not giving them that.
I
I'm
think you
just
gotta
gonna
give
say
it.
that.
You
I'm just
got
gonna
to.
say that. I'm gonna post. We're gonna post this on Twitter. We gotta ask all of y'all.
A
Let
lot
us
of
know
people
what y'all
probably
think.
will agree with you, but I think they're wrong. I think in today, like you gotta if you repeat, you keep the reign. That's it. That's dynasty. You have multiple, and you have that core group of guys. Like you know what I mean? Like it's not like majority of the guys are gone. It's like a whole new team or something like that. Maybe that's my only thing. I would be like nah, but like the core group of people are still there. Then I gotta give that to you, man. Like it's just back to back is so hard, man.
Oh, it's definitely hard. I mean, it's not a lot of times that happens, you know. But I don't know.
You
That's
go
a tough one.
down. I mean, do you want to what call it a mini dynasty? Then that make you feel better, like compared to like you know other things like that. But like it's just a dynasty to me.
All right, we'll leave it at that.
Mm.
We
What
agree to
what was
disagree.
what was
Agree to
your well?
disagree.
You kind of agreed with me though on a lot of them.
Uh, uh, but
You're
all
you're
right,
you're
my
you're all
hypothetical.
over. Yeah, what's your hypothetical?
I am all over. I'm always all over. But your hypothetical. I mean, my hypothetical to your hypothetical again. Say they lose, right? 93. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they don't make the Super Bowl. Jimmy comes back. Do they beat the 49ers in 94?
Yes. Yeah.
But I'll say this though. We made the point earlier. I don't think San Fran does what it does that offseason if they beat the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think they sign all these guys on defense if they beat the
Oh,
Cowboys.
probably right. If they beat them in '93, and maybe some
Especially
people.
Dion. Especially Dion. I don't think
Especially
they do that.
Dion, or where they get Ken Norton and Ricky Jackson and Dent and all that. True, but and some people, maybe some guys covering Dow, they still feel like the Cowboys would have win in. And I just think with what was going on, I don't think Dallas goes into San Fran and does it. I think also not having the bye week would have that the
Yeah.
Cowboys was a team who needed that bye week. So I just don't see it. I think the Niners really in big games like that. If you have Jimmy Johnson, they never beat the Cowboys in my opinion. I think what that difference was Barry Switzer was like just in cruise
Yeah.
control,
Yeah,
and
he
the
was.
play inmates, the assistant coaches who were still there, who were in '94, who were like bitter, and they were Jimmy's guys, and they were ready to leave. They're running it, and the players are running it, but you don't have anyone keeping that discipline, that mentality of never being complacent, always on edge, never feeling like you've arrived. Yeah, I mean, let's look at it. If that pass interference call is called from Dion and Michael Irvin, I think
Yeah.
that's a totally different game. And they were up 21-0. So
Yeah.
I just think if Jimmy is back, if Jimmy's there with the Cowboys in a big game, the Niners never beat the Cowboys.
Mm,
Not in
I
the
agree.
playoffs.
Not in playoffs. I agree. I don't think they go in. I think they go in, and even if they have to go to San Fran in '94 with Jimmy Johnson, I think they win that game. But I don't even
I
think they would have to go to San Fran. Like I just think so much changes that offseason if they lose. I just think I don't think San Fran does what it does. like because they overhauled the defense. Why? Because they lost to the Cowboys. You know what I'm saying? Like I think they figure like they have enough to continue to beat them, and it's so much changes, so much changes.
The Cowboys, what Jimmy did, and I think it's why he's such a unique coach, and it's like for as little of the run that it was, and little as time as he was in the league, but why he's like an all-time coach is the physical toughness. Well, number one, the talent evaluation. Then the
Absolutely,
fit, that's number one. What Jimmy did,
yeah,
but the physical and mental toughness that they had, they got into the Niners. The Niners were getting smacked around physically, and the Niners
yep,
were getting messed with mentally. And that edge, but that they could do that because Jimmy kept that pressure on
right,
all the time. And Jimmy, after they win the first Super Bowl, he worked him even harder the next year. Like he that psychology major in him, like he knew how to like mentally push the buttons.
yeah.
And I think that was such a huge thing missing in '94 for Dallas.
Yeah, I agree with that mental edge because they had guys like Steve Young, Jerry Rice, like throwing punches, like you know what I'm saying? Like they were in they were in the 49ers heads, and I think that it organizationally, like you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's why again, like the 49ers that off season went and you know they just bought themselves a brand new defense, and they needed to do that mentally more than talent wise. I mean, talent wise, they had to do it too because they couldn't beat these guys. But I think mentally, for an organization, they needed a complete change and a different approach against that Cowboys team. And they did it. They got it. But it took all of that.
It took, and look at it. It was in their heads that we let Charles Haley go to this
Mm-hmm.
team. They didn't know that the Cowboys were going to be that good. They didn't think it. And I think they thought, hey, he's going to be such a headache for him. But that bothered them. Charles Haley got up for those games. He said those are his Super Bowls.
Yeah.
That's why for them we got Ken Norton. We got you back. And like
Yeah.
they were all trying. They had to be that. The Niners were a button down organization. That's why you got
Yep.
Ricky Waters was strutting, Dion, William Floyd. They were trying to get that hardness like Dallas.
Yep.
Like I just don't think they were just trying to copy him. That's kind of why I knocked George Seifert a little bit.
Good point. Yeah. Yeah, they
You
were
know,
emulating. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
like
because you can see that. Like it was just like, and it was like so in your face. Like Merton Hanks, like where the heck you come from? Like doing all
mm-hmm.
this stuff. Like you know what I'm saying? Like it was bad. Yeah, Gary Plummer celebrating. You know what I mean? Like it's come on.
Because they saw. I think
Yeah.
Dallas were the bullies. Like I think they saw the NFC East had become, like we've talked about before on this show. They had become the bullies of the league, and Dallas was even better than what you saw with they were better than the
Right.
Giants, Washington, Philly, and that team was like scary. I think that you had to I wish Buffalo would have done that, honestly.
Right. Right.
Like, but San Fran did do it, but you know, I George Seifert got the '89 Super Bowl, and then to me got outcoached in '90 and butchered the Montana Young thing really bad.
Absolutely.
And and then he couldn't beat Jimmy in the Cowboys. And it took having a goofy coach like Barry Switzer for them to get over the edge. That's why George Seifert, we do like the Hall of Fame talks with other people. He doesn't get love from me, honestly. Like I don't give him that love for that reason.
Yeah, we could have won the Super Bowl with that '89 team.
Yeah,
That was like Barry
that,
Switzer. Like he destroyed the Cowboys, but he got a Super Bowl. I think me and you could have coached them to a Super Bowl.
yeah, maybe the greatest team ever. It's up there.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, George just was there. So it's fun though, man. I don't know. I think I might even change I think you got to give '92 NFC Championship game as like the best win of the '90s Cowboys because just going in the candlestick. But
Yeah.
I think this is number 2.
Yeah. Me that game against Washington was huge for me because they put them like on the map. Like you know what I'm saying? Like
It was a
like
big one.
they were having a really good season, but it was like that with a young team, and we didn't know what they were, and they went into Washington and beat that great team. And I was like, whoa, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, these guys are coming, you know what I'm saying? And they were there. They were there, you know. I know these other games were more important, you know what I'm saying, for sure. And I think when you look at them like that, I think, yeah, you got to bump them up. But for me, like, when I think about this Cowboys team, the first game I go to is that Washington game in Washington and JFK. Like, I mean, excuse me, and you go in there and then you beat that team, and then you got these other games. To me, like, I know these games are more important because they meant more. Like, when it comes to like playoffs and you go into the Super Bowl, like obviously that's the game, right? And then this game here, they win a division and get home field and all that fun stuff. But yeah, that Washington game was an important one for me.
It's huge, and you're right.
Yeah.
That was a game. They were like middle 6-5 or something like that at the time. Washington's
And then
going
they
for an
took
undefeated
off.
season,
Yeah.
and they wind up making the playoffs. You know, but remember, Aikman gets hurt,
Yep.
so that game, Berline finishes. That run is which. So that's why I kind of
Steve Berline run. Yeah.
Steve Berline. They beat Chicago in the wild card with Steve Berline. Berline starts against Detroit. Aikman comes in garbage. Aikman was not the guy until '92, really.
Yeah.
In a weird sense, like until that first Super Bowl run, it really wasn't Troy's team like that. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. Like he still, all the good things like didn't really happen with him. It
Yeah.
seemed like so that's kind of why I still put that third. And you're right, I put him on the map, but I just think those other two games
Yeah.
were their best, and it created the dynasty, and this one I feel saved it. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
awesome.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. But this was a good game to look at and a great performance. And again, that's what we do here at Bigger Than the Game. If you're new to listening to this podcast or watching this podcast on YouTube, like, you know, we want to bring out these games that people don't talk about much, but they were huge importance when not to a few legacies as we broke down, not only to the Cowboys, but a couple other teams there. But Hall of Fame careers like Emmitt Smith's, right? Like, you know, these games that people don't really mention. Everybody goes to the Super Bowls and stuff like that. But this is an all-time great performance. We wanted to make sure we highlighted that. And I know we are, you know, we were a little disagreement on, like, you know, how great Emmitt was and things like that. I think hands down he's one of the top running backs of all time for sure. And you know, like this performance here kind of like just shows you, you know, what he was made of. And again, it's an epic performance. So if you we'll definitely, you know, post some stuff on Twitter, especially about the back-to-back stuff. But you know, where do you rank Emmitt, right? Like when it comes to, like, I know Deremy got him in the top 5. I have him in my top 8. I think I got a couple of the guys in front of him. But where do you have Emmitt at? Where do you rank him at? And you know, how do you rank this performance compared to like other guys? Like, and we're not talking about Paul Pierce being wheelchaired off and coming back all of time. No, this is an all-time great performance here what Emmitt put out and displayed in front of America, because this was a big-time game. So, Deremy, this was a lot of fun to do, man.
Yeah, and everyone, I know if you're still listening and watching, we were off December, you know, and this was I think it was a defining 2023 was a defining year for our podcast. We got a
Absolutely.
lot of challenges, a lot of things happening, and we, you know, we're still standing, and you know, from September and December we were off, but we're coming back strong, and I'm excited because there's just so much
Yeah.
to look forward in 2024 for this podcast, and so many big anniversaries of different games and events, and you know, different athletes and players, teams that we want to cover. So we're just pumped, man, and you know, please word of mouth, you know, follow us on Twitter or X as they call it, or you can
Yeah.
also on Instagram at Bigger Game Pod. You know, let us know what you think. Let us know where you put Emmitt. Let us know what you want to hear about this year. You know, we're gonna have a lot of stuff coming on. So, and also follow our YouTube channel, Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. For the man, the myth, the legend, the president of the Thurman Thomas Club, Mr. Jose Ruiz, I'm Deremy Dove. Thank you guys for listening to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. Take care.
Peace.